Hi everyone, this is the video for your practice semester 1 exam. So I am not going to do every problem, but I'll do most of them. And if you have questions, just ask in class or send me a message and we can go over things. So question 1. Enter the entire graph of function f is shown in the figure below. Write the domain and the range. So remember that a domain are your x's and your range is your y's. So the x's go from here to here. Now notice that your domain, right, this circle is open, which means that it doesn't include this number, which in this case is -1, -2, -3, right, -4, -5, like it says up there. So we're going to know that x, okay, x is going to be greater than -5. And it goes all the way to here, which is 3. Now this is a closed circle, which means it includes it. So x is less than or equal to 3. So remember, when you have that closed circle, you go ahead and you put the line under. Now the range, which are the y's, are how high and how low. Now we see that right here. It's less than 5, right? Because it's less than 5, but it's greater than -3. So we know that y is greater than -3, but y is less than or equal to, because that filled in circle that's right here, 5. And that's our domain and range. Question 2, graph the parabola. Well, when we start to graph the parabola, right, we can do it using a table. Now you need at least 3 points on Alex to graph a parabola. So number 1, we can use the vertex form, which tells us that when we add to x, we go left. So this is 2 to the left, and we go down 1. So if I go -2, 1, 2, 2 to the left, down 1, that is my vertex. So now I know that my vertex is at -2, 1. So I can go ahead and just go -1 and -3, one above, one below, put it into my formula here, right, my equation, and that'll give me 2 other points. So if I have a -1 plus 2 squared minus 1, that's going to be 1 squared, which is 1 minus 1, which is 0. So -1, 0. Oops, I'm sorry, I put that in the wrong spot. -2. These are 2's. So -1, 0 would be right there. Right? And now, if I put a -3 in, -3 plus 2, which is a -1 squared minus 1, right? -1 squared is 1 minus 1 is also a 0. So I can put a 0 in right there. And then when I would graph my parabola in Alex, it would look like this. Now remember, when you graph in Alex, you find the vertex first, okay? And then you find your second point, and you make sure it's up or down, okay? You can put your points in, and then when you make your parabola, you choose up or down. Suppose that the function f is defined for all real numbers. This is our piecewise function here. So it says x is less than 2. That doesn't include 2. So when I find 2 on my graph, right, 2 is right there. So that means this function here only lives less than 2, but doesn't include 2. It's that open circle. This one here, right, that one includes 2. So that's a closed circle, and this one is going to be everything on this side. Right, so we can go ahead and graph this. Let's graph this first one using blue. Right, so this one, we're going to use the blue circle. This is in y equals mx plus b. So our y-intercept is 3, positive 3. So I go ahead, and this graph is very hard to see on this. Here's my 0, so 1. Oh, where is my, oh, here it is. This is my right here are my axis or axi. So I go 1, 2, 3. Right here is my first point, my y-intercept. Now my slope is -2 over 1. So that means I go down 2 over 1. Down 2 over 1. But I'm on that line, and I'm not allowed to be on that line. And that's where I end. So here's one part of it. Let's do this other one in red. X minus 3. So that means I start at -3 right here. So 1, 2, 3. Now, I'm going to put a point here, but remember, I'm not allowed to be in this area. I am too far left, but we're going to graph anyway. So x minus 3, the slope is just plus 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. Now here I'm allowed to have a full circle because right here it shows me a full circle. Up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. Now all I have to do is go back and erase my points that are in an area where I'm not allowed. Down 2 over 1. I'm sorry, it's right there. So this one goes this way. This one overlaps and goes this way. And this is what it would look like. Is it continuous? Yes. See how it meets itself? So the answer is yes, it is continuous. If it ever breaks, it's not continuous. Below is the graph. Translate it to make it the graph of this, right? So -3 just means 3 to the right. Plus 1 means 1 up. Remember, add to x, go left. So we're subtracting, so we go right. So it just means I'm going to take it, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 right, and up 1. So I'm just going to move this right to here. You can just pick it up and translate it in Alex, and it'll just go right there. Question 5, the graph in blue is translated a whole number of units horizontally and vertically to obtain the graph in red. So blue goes to red. So what happened here? Well, if you think about it, we went 1, 2, 3, 4 left, and 3 up. Remember, add to left, right? Add to x, go left. So what this means is that we just have an x plus 4, and then we went up 3, so it's plus 3. And that's what happens. We have to go ahead and solve this for zeros. So all we do here is 9 plus z equals 0. 3z minus 8 equals 0. Minus 9, z equals -9. Over here we add 8. 3z equals 8. When I divide by 3, z equals 8/3. So my answer is z equals -9, comma, 8/3. Solve for v. Well, we can factor out a v here. So I have a v equals 3v plus 12 equals 0. So v equals 0, and 3v plus 12 equals 0, and minus 12. So 3v equals -12. Divide by 3. So v equals -4. So v equals -4, 0. Right, so on this one, we're going to solve for x. Right, so we need two things that multiply to be 4. So we're just going to factor stuff here, right? Basically, this just means this equals 0 and this equals 0. So I can go ahead and factor this. When I factor this, right, 7 times 2 equals 14, and 7 minus 2 equals 5. So this is what we have. So all of this equals 0. X minus 7 equals 0. X plus 2 equals 0. And 9x minus 36 equals 0. Well, this gets me a positive 7. This gets me a negative 2. If I add 36, 9x equals 36. When I divide by 9, I get 4. So my answer is x equals -2, 4, and 7. Using the graph of the parabola to fill in the table. Does this parabola open upwards or downwards? Well, we see it opens upwards. Where's the vertex? Vertex is right there, which is going to be 3, -1. Find the intercepts. Well, the x-intercepts are right there at 4 and 2. So 2 and 4. Where's the y-intercept? Y-intercept is right here at 7. So 7. Find the equation of the axis of symmetry. Right? So the axis of symmetry is right here. And that's just going to be x equals 3, right? The axis of symmetry is where the vertex is. Right, let's go ahead and graph this parabola. Right, so we know that right here our vertex is going to be plus 1, 5. So 1 and 5, and then we can use a table to graph the rest. Right, so I have a negative 3, x minus 1 squared plus 5. Right, so if I am at 1, 5, I'm going to go 0, and I'm going to go 2. Well, negative 3 times 0 minus 1 squared, that's a negative 1 squared. So negative 3 times a negative 1 squared, which is 1, 5, which is negative 3 plus 5, which is going to be 2. So it'll be 0, 2. All right. Let me do a 2 here. Negative 3, 2 minus 1 squared plus 5. Negative 3, 2 minus 1 is 1 squared plus 5. Right, 1 squared is just 1. Negative 3 times 1, which is negative 3 plus 5, is 2. And 2, 2. So right there. And there is my parabola. Fill in the blank with the number to make the expression a perfect square. So we need something to make a perfect square. So remember, we take b and divide it by 2, right? And then we square it. So b in this case is negative 2. So negative 2 divided by 2, all squared. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1 squared, which is 1. So the answer is 1. Find all the zeros of the quadratic equation. So either A, we can factor it, or B, we can use the quadratic formula, or we can complete the square, right? So first of all, can we factor it, right? What equals 16? You have 4 and 4. Remember, there are 2 that have to be the same that equal 10. So that equals 8, right? You have 8 times 2. Well, that equals 10. So all that means is that this is going to factor into x minus 8, x minus 2, right? And that means x equals 8, x equals 2. So 2, 8 is your answer. If you plugged it in to try it, right, 8 squared minus 10 times 8 plus 16 should equal 0. 64 minus 80 plus 16. Negative 16 plus 16 equals 0. Answer the questions below about the quadratic function. Does the quadratic function have a minimum or maximum? When you think about it, this negative means that this is upside down. So this only has a maximum. What is the function's minimum or maximum? So all you have to do now is find the vertex. Well, how do you find the vertex? Either A, you can go ahead and complete the square, or you can just use the negative b over 2a, which in this case would be negative 4 over positive 2 times negative 2. So negative 4 over negative 2 is 2, right? So that's my x. My x is 2, so now I put it in. Negative 2 times 2 squared plus 4. Plus 4 times 2 plus 2. 4, this is 4, right? 2 squared is 4. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Plus 8 plus 2. Well, these cancel out. Just give me 2. So 2, 2 would be my vertex. Where does the minimum or maximum occur? Oh, I'm sorry. So this one just wants the y, and this one's the x. Subtract. Well, when we do this, we do real numbers with real numbers and imaginary with imaginary. So when you think about it, this is just 6 minus 5, which is 1, and negative 4 minus a negative 6, which is negative 10i. Oops, I'm sorry. Negative 4 minus, it's plus 2i. Negative negative is positive. We're going to multiply. So all we do with multiply is just FOIL. That gives me a positive 15. This gives me a negative 25i. This gives me a positive 6i. And this one gives me a negative 15i squared. Now remember, I squared is just a negative 1. So 15, and we'll call this negative 19i, that's a 25. And when you think about this, right, this one is negative 15 times negative 1, which is a positive 30, plus 30. So that gives me a 45 minus 19i. Okay, now we're going to divide. When we divide, all we're going to do is multiply by the conjugate on the bottom. 5 minus 4i, and a 5 minus 4i. So on the top, that gives me, if I go ahead and I take care of all this, that gives me a 10i minus 8i squared. We'll just write it as I squared like this. All over, well, this here gives me 25. This gives me a negative 20i. This gives me a positive 20i. Remember, those cancel out. And then finally, I have a negative 16i squared. Right? Now remember, if we go ahead and start simplifying things, this will be 10i. This right here, this I squared, is negative 1, right? So 8 times negative 1 is a negative 8. And negative negative 8 is positive 8. Now on the bottom here, these cancel out. And I squared, if you remember, is negative 1. So 16, negative 16 times a negative 1 is a positive 16. So that will be 41. Simplify I to the 41 power. All we do is take 41 and divide it by 4. So that goes in 10 times with a remainder of 1. So this is really just equal to I to the first power, which is just I, which also can be the square root of negative 1, depending on its answer. We're going to solve this. Right, so what we're going to do here is we are going to use our square root property. We're going to add 72 to both sides. So u minus 3 all squared equals 72. We square root both sides, giving us u minus 3 equals the square root of 72, plus or minus. And then we can go ahead and we can add 3 to both sides. So u equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 72. Now the square root of 72 is really the square root of 36 and 2, which is 6 square root of 2. So our answer, our final answer is u equals 3 plus or minus 6 square root of 2. All right, we're going to go ahead and solve the quadratic equation by completing the square. First, choose the appropriate form, then fill in the blanks. So when you think about it, right, what we're going to do is we're going to take this dude and move him over here. So that's 2. Right, so now I have x squared plus 2x equals 2. Then I take my middle term, 2, and I divide it by 2, which gets me 1. Then I take the 1 and I square it, which is 1. And I have to add that to both sides. So if you think about it, what I'm doing here is I'm adding 1 and I'm adding 1. Right, now I have to factor this. Well, when I factor it, whatever this answer was is what it's going to be, a positive 1. X plus 1 squared equals 3. So that's that. And when you get into the answer, you have x plus 1 squared equals 3. Well, all I do is square root both sides. So x plus 1 equals the square root of 3, and that's plus or minus, and I minus 1. So x equals negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 3. And that's what goes there. Use the quadratic formula. So remember, the quadratic formula is a negative b plus or minus, I'll do it over here, negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So here's my a, my b, and my c. So negative b would be negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 9 squared minus 4 times 3 times 4 all over 2 times 3, which is 6. So negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 81. Now all of this here is going to be 12 times 4, which is 48, right? All over 6. Okay, so now we do 81 minus our 48, which gets us 33. So now I have negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 33 all over 6. And to tell you the truth, you can't get any, 33 would be 3 and 11, which doesn't work. So that's it. That would be our answer. Compute the value of the discriminant and give the number of real solutions. So the discriminant is just that b squared minus 4ac. So there's my a, my b, and my c. So when you think about it, it's 9 squared minus 4 times a negative 3 times a negative 2. So that's 81 minus, well, 4 times 3 is negative 12, and negative 12 times a negative 2 is a positive 24. So when you go ahead and you do some math, you got 61 and 57. So positive 57, that's the discriminant. So it's going to be, the number of real solutions will be 2. Because remember, if this is positive, it's 2. 0, it's 1. Real solutions. If it's negative, there are 0 real solutions. We are going to actually skip 22 and 23. I didn't put them on the final. When I started doing them, I realized that we hadn't done this process. So we're going to go right to 24. Solve y squared equals 64, where y is a real number. Simplify your answer. Well, that one's easy, right? Y squared equals 64. We square root both sides. So y equals plus or minus the square root of 64, which is 8. So y equals plus or minus 8. 25, we're just going to find our zeros, which is this. And all it is 2x equals 0, x minus 9 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0. So this one is 0, this one is positive 9, this one is positive 2. So our zeros are 0, 2, and 9. And that's it. So let me know if you have questions.